Honestly, waking up to the idea that Kylie Jenner might be quietly uncovering a messy situation involving Timothée Chalamet and Odessa was not on anyone's bingo card for the day. But when you stop scrolling and actually piece things together, the blind items, the timing, the sudden shifts in behavior, it stops feeling like baseless gossip and starts feeling calculated. This isn't just bored internet speculation. It's a trail of small but telling moments lining up a little too perfectly. Missed appearances. Subtle withdrawals. Kylie fading into the background while Timothée continues his polished Hollywood ascent, posing on red carpets beside the very co-star people can't stop murmuring about. And before anyone dismisses this with the usual, they're actors or it's just press chemistry, let's be clear, this goes far beyond flirtatious interviews or on-screen synergy. Something deeper feels unsettled here. Let's start with what's impossible to ignore. Timothée Chalamet is currently untouchable in the industry. Awards chatter, Oscar-level praise, Marty Supreme being framed as serious, prestige cinema, Hollywood is treating him like he's above reproach. Questioning him feels almost forbidden. Meanwhile, Kylie is barely visible. Aside from the Marty Supreme Los Angeles premiere on December 8, 2025, where they appeared together in coordinated orange chrome hearts outfits tied to the film's ping-pong aesthetic, she's been conspicuously absent. And according to people close to the situation, that distance isn't coincidental. Kylie has been trying to maintain an unbothered exterior, but she's not naive. She knows exactly the kind of man she's dating. Timothée's appeal isn't a secret. He's charming, constantly praised, and surrounded by attention wherever he goes. That's not insecurity, that's reality. And if rumors are to be believed, Kylie was never truly concerned about fans. Her real unease has always centered on co-stars. So instead of reacting publicly, she observes. Quietly. Carefully. It wouldn't be surprising if her team just so happens to be present at events, not to stir drama or draw attention, but simply to watch how he moves when she's not around. No confrontation. Just information. Things start getting uncomfortable when you look at the family dynamics. Kylie's sisters reportedly haven't been sold on Timothée for a while, and tensions escalated after he failed to attend Kris Jenner's major milestone birthday. That wasn't interpreted as a scheduling conflict, it felt like a deliberate absence. And in that family, showing up matters. Behind the scenes, the whispers suggest the sisters have been urging Kylie to stop pretending everything is fine. From the outside, they say, this relationship has felt off for much longer than she's willing to admit. And that's where Odessa enters the picture. Because in Hollywood, people don't just materialize into proximity like that without intention. Odessa didn't randomly appear. Her placement feels strategic, Marty Supreme, industry events, premieres, press moments, all arranged with suspicious precision. Before even touching the cheating allegations, the blind items alone deserve attention. Lately, they haven't just been vague hints, they've been oddly detailed. Almost uncomfortably precise. And when blind items start reading less like guesses and more like confirmations, that's usually when the truth is closer than anyone wants to admit. At this point, it doesn't take much imagination to see who those blind items are circling around. Timothée fits a little too neatly. One blind described of meme actor, skipping events tied to his own film because a co-star he'd been involved with was upset. The moment that surfaced, people didn't exactly need a decoder ring. Suddenly, Timothée's missed appearances stopped looking like harmless scheduling conflicts and started feeling deliberate. Then there was another blind from November 2024 that pushed things even further. It claimed the same meme actor was rejected by a co-star and responded by making things difficult for her afterward. What makes that especially interesting is that, publicly, Odessa has never hinted at anything negative. Quite the opposite, actually. In interviews, she's consistently glowing when she talks about Timothée, how much she respects him, how deeply he understood the role, how they challenged each other creatively, how their energy on set just clicked. And no, that doesn't mean she's lying. But people don't usually speak with that level of warmth and emphasis unless there's something more layered underneath. Praise like that tends to come from familiarity, not distance. Then there was the offhand comment that raised eyebrows, Odessa casually mentioning that she met Timothée for dinner in New York before filming even began. It was dropped so lightly you could miss it, but moments like that matter. That kind of pre-production meetup reads less like coincidence and more like two people testing the dynamic early, seeing how the vibe feels before the cameras start rolling. On its own, it's harmless. Actors meet, talk, build rapport. That's normal. But context changes everything. Stack that dinner on top of the blind items, on top of Kylie already feeling uneasy, and suddenly the innocence fades. What once looked like routine industry behavior starts to feel loaded. This is where Odessa's dating history becomes impossible to ignore. When you zoom out, a pattern emerges, and it's not accidental. She's consistently linked to people with influence, visibility, and real weight in the industry. Her relationship with Jaden Smith lasted years and was highly public, affectionate, photographed constantly, always showing up together. Then, abruptly, it ended. Officially, it was framed as mutual focus on careers. Unofficially, Jaden was later seen kissing someone else at Coachella, and the timing didn't exactly suggest a clean break. Then there were the Dylan O'Brien rumors around 2019, never confirmed, endlessly debated on Reddit, but persistent enough that her name keeps resurfacing in those conversations. Messy timelines, no clear answers, just more smoke without clarity. And then there's Billie Eilish. Yes, that Billie Eilish. In November 2023, Billie posted a video of herself and Odessa kissing. It stayed up just long enough for everyone to see it, and then vanished. This happened right after Billie had publicly spoken about being attracted to women, which sent the internet into predictable chaos. And after that? Silence. Same rhythm, new name. That history adds weight to what Odessa later shared about working with Timothée on Marty Supreme. She described the hardest scenes, the ones where she felt awkward or exposed, and how he stayed by her side between takes, holding her hand the entire time. Sit with that for a moment. Yes, it's kind. Yes, it's supportive. No one's denying that. But it's also intimate in a way that quietly slips past the boundaries people like to pretend are firm and obvious. On the surface, it's easy to explain away: professional care, friendly reassurance, harmless comfort. Emotionally, though, it occupies a far more complicated space. Because intimacy isn't just about physical closeness. It's about access. It's about who gets to see you when you're vulnerable, who comforts you when you're unsure, who shares those unguarded moments when the performance stops. When someone outside a relationship begins to occupy that role, even unintentionally, things stop being simple very quickly. Especially when the person waiting at home is already uneasy, already on edge, already noticing every interview clip, every behind-the-scenes anecdote, every subtle interaction that finds its way online. Imagine watching your partner grow closer to people you don't fully know, inside an industry that monetizes chemistry and sells closeness as spectacle. Imagine feeling like you're competing with stories that may be exaggerated, but still feel real enough to sting. That kind of insecurity doesn't appear out of thin air. It's built slowly, moment by moment, until even the smallest details feel heavy. And by the time it gets there, nothing feels innocent anymore. This is the nuance most people overlook. It's never about a single hug, a stray joke, or one charged scene. It's about build-up. The slow accumulation of moments that, over time, quietly shift the balance of a relationship. When those moments pile up, they can make someone feel sidelined in their own partnership. So when a girlfriend is already keeping her distance, already feeling like she's observing instead of belonging, already noticing how the attention never fully leaves the people orbiting her partner, those harmless gestures stop feeling kind. They start feeling like proof of a fear she's been swallowing for far too long. And things only get messier from there, because Odessa wasn't the only name on Kylie's mental radar. That detail alone speaks volumes. When you start monitoring more than one person, it usually means trust is already cracking. Allegedly, Kylie had serious issues after Timothée filmed Marty Supreme scenes with Gwyneth Paltrow. Yes, that Gwyneth. Her name carries legacy, authority, and a kind of untouchable confidence that can magnify insecurity instantly. It's one thing to feel threatened by a peer. It's another to feel threatened by someone with cultural power, decades of status, and zero hesitation discussing intimacy in public. And before the predictable, it's just acting, argument gets thrown out. Let's pause for honesty. Acting doesn't happen in a void. It's not sterile or robotic. It's real people, real proximity, real emotional exchanges. Long hours, repeated takes, inside jokes, trust built through rehearsal. Pretending it's all detached and emotionless may be comforting, but it's not realistic. Chemistry, especially when sustained over time, isn't something you can fully manufacture, and that truth can be deeply unsettling for the person watching from the outside. Then came the part that reportedly made everything worse. Gwyneth didn't keep things neutral or understated. Instead, she openly joked about the intimacy coordinator, laughing about being told to pull back, framing the guidelines as excessive or unnecessary. She spoke about the scenes casually, almost playfully, like it was all effortless and lighthearted and nothing worth dissecting. Maybe to her, it wasn't. But to someone already on edge, that kind of public nonchalance can feel dismissive, if not outright disrespectful. Because the issue isn't only what happens on set. It's how those moments are talked about afterward. When someone publicly minimizes the boundaries meant to protect everyone involved, it subtly suggests those boundaries weren't taken seriously in the first place. And if they didn't matter there, the mind starts wondering, where else didn't they matter? That's how spirals begin, late nights replaying interviews, rereading headlines, wondering what was brushed off behind closed doors. According to insiders, Kylie didn't just feel uncomfortable. She was furious. Not quietly upset. Not mildly irritated. Furious. She already reportedly struggled with Timothée doing intimate scenes at all, which points to an existing boundary tension. But hearing someone else openly joke about those moments, laying them out for public consumption, was allegedly the breaking point. At that stage, it wasn't just jealousy. It was about respect. About feeling unheard. About sensing that her discomfort wasn't being taken seriously, by the industry, by the narrative, and possibly by the person she was supposed to trust most. When things reach that level, emotions don't come out neatly. They don't stay calm or articulate. They spill over. And that's reportedly what happened. Behind the scenes, arguments weren't cinematic or dramatic in a glamorous way, they were raw. Raised voices. Repeated conversations going in circles because neither side felt fully understood. Kylie allegedly pushed for stricter boundaries moving forward, not as a gentle request, but as a firm line. Because once someone feels like they're losing their footing in a relationship, compromise stops feeling safe. And that's where the real tension lives. Boundaries set under emotional strain often feel like limitations instead of shared agreements. One person is trying to regain security, control, and reassurance. The other is navigating a career built on openness, chemistry, and public exposure. Those realities clash. One craves stability. The other depends on flexibility. Trying to hold both at once can breed resentment on both sides, even when there's still love underneath it all. What truly intensifies everything is how public it all becomes. None of these moments exist in a vacuum. Every rumor, every clipped interview, every casual behind-the-scenes comment adds another layer of pressure. Even silence gets dissected. Even basic professionalism can be reinterpreted as something suspicious. When you're in a relationship with someone constantly under a spotlight, privacy stops being a given. Issues that should live quietly between two people instead get stretched into public narratives that strangers feel entitled to analyze. So when people brush this off as simple insecurity or reduce it to just acting, they're skipping over the emotional reality underneath. They ignore how lonely it can feel to love someone whose job requires intimacy with others, and whose success depends on making those connections look convincing. They overlook how draining it is to constantly reassure yourself that you're not being slowly replaced, overshadowed, or deprioritized. And they forget that trust, once strained, doesn't reset just because someone says, "You have nothing to worry about." Because worry isn't rational. It's emotional. It's built on patterns, not promises. And once those patterns start to feel unsettling, even the smallest thing can set off a much larger reaction. A throwaway joke in an interview, a photo from set, a comment that wasn't meant to carry weight but somehow does. That's why this situation feels so heavy. It's not about turning anyone into a villain. It's not about accusing anyone of crossing an obvious line. It's about acknowledging that intimacy, emotional or physical, creates ripples. That kindness can still hurt. That professionalism can still blur boundaries. And that loving someone doesn't make you immune to feeling sidelined, especially when the world keeps reminding you how replaceable you might be. What reportedly unfolded wasn't just an argument over scenes or co-stars. It was a clash between two fundamentally different needs. One person needed reassurance, structure, and emotional safety. The other needed trust, freedom, and room to do their job without feeling watched. Neither need is wrong. But when they collide, something always gives, and whatever breaks leaves a mark. That's why this doesn't feel like a throwaway celebrity rumor. It reads like a deeply human story about insecurity, power imbalances, and the slow erosion that can happen when love and ambition pull in opposite directions. It's uncomfortable. It's messy. And it's a reminder that behind the glamour, the emotional stakes are often far higher than anyone wants to admit. Take the boundary about explicit scenes being off the table, at least from her perspective. That line alone says a lot. Not just about comfort, but about awareness. People who've been around this industry long enough don't draw boundaries randomly. They draw them because they've seen what happens when lines blur, when "it's just acting" quietly turns into something messier, harder to contain, and impossible to rewind once the audience starts filling in gaps with their own assumptions. When you step back and look at everything together, the blind items, the missed events, Odessa, the hand-holding, and now the Gwyneth situation, it stops looking like scattered drama and starts looking like someone responding to a pattern. Not one explosive moment, but a slow accumulation of details that feel harmless alone and alarming together. Because patterns don't announce themselves loudly. They whisper. They show up as discomfort you can't quite justify, questions you ask yourself late at night and dismiss by morning because you don't want to seem insecure or paranoid. And Kylie, whether people acknowledge it or not, has lived through very public relationship fallout before. She knows how quickly narratives form. She knows how fast a single image can erase years of context. That kind of experience doesn't make someone dramatic, it makes them alert. It teaches you to notice shifts early, before they become obvious to everyone else. By the time the public starts catching on, things have usually been unraveling behind the scenes for a long time. So the real question almost asks itself, did something concrete actually happen on that set, or did Kylie sense the signs early and quietly pull back before it exploded into something public? Those two possibilities aren't as different as people like to think. Something doesn't have to fully happen to feel real. Emotional closeness, blurred boundaries, private comfort, inside jokes, those things register long before anything physical ever does. And for someone watching from the outside, especially someone emotionally invested, the difference between almost and already can feel irrelevant. The threat feels the same. What's just as telling is what happened afterward. Notice how no one rushed to shut the rumors down. No immediate denials. No carefully staged appearances meant to reassure anyone. Just distance. Missed events. Separate schedules. Subtle shifts that only stand out if you're paying attention. Everyone moving cautiously, like they know one wrong step could turn quiet speculation into a narrative they can't control. And silence, in situations like this, is rarely accidental. Sometimes it's legal caution, but sometimes it's uncertainty. It can mean there are too many versions of the story floating around internally for anyone to confidently deny anything. Denial requires clarity. It requires everyone to be aligned. When that's missing, silence becomes the safest option, and time does the work of creating distance. People like to believe public figures owe them explanations, but often the most revealing moments are the ones where no explanation is given. Where actions quietly replace words. Kylie skipping events she would normally attend. The absence of shared appearances. The way enthusiasm subtly drains from things that once seemed effortless. Those aren't coincidences. They're choices, small, deliberate ones, made either to protect something fragile or to prepare for letting it go. And the Gwyneth situation feels like the tipping point not because it's the most dramatic, but because it completes the pattern. One incident can be dismissed. Two can be rationalized. Three starts to feel uneasy. Four becomes impossible to ignore. When the same energy keeps repeating around the same person, in the same environment, the question stops being what if, and turns into why does this keep happening? And once you're asking that, you're already emotionally halfway out the door. What stands out most is how deliberate the withdrawal feels. This isn't chaos. There's no dramatic fallout, no impulsive social media moves, no emotional statements aimed at the public. Instead, everything feels measured, quiet, restrained, intentional. That kind of distance doesn't come from sudden shock. It comes from recognition. From someone who's been here before, who knows exactly how this story tends to end if you ignore the early warning signs. And there's something quietly heartbreaking about that, because it suggests the trust didn't collapse all at once. It wore down. Gradually. In ways that are almost harder to pinpoint. And erosion